Michelle had always been considered a beautiful woman, although she rarely paid attention to her appearance as much as many of her acquaintances did. She was originally blonde, but one day she noticed a few gray hairs in her hair. This was a little reminder for her that as the years go by, she decided to go to her stylist to do something new and fresh. After a long discussion with a stylist, she dyed her hair bright white and cut it into a stylish bob. This new image gave her appearance modernity, sophistication, and a certain audacity. Harry, her husband, was delighted. He couldn't help but notice how this transformation made Michelle even more stunning. For him, she became the personification of both maturity and beauty. Michelle recently celebrated her 49th birthday. Her height of 170 centimeters and slender figure made her noticeable in any society, although she herself never considered herself a model. Her beauty was different. It combined confidence, classicism, and some subtle magnetic force. She preferred a classic style of clothing that emphasized her natural elegance. Most often, she could be seen in tight pencil skirts and mid-heeled shoes. This outfit perfectly emphasized her figure, which remained slim despite her age. However, she had one feature that was impossible to miss: her breasts. Over time, her curves had changed slightly, and some weight gain seemed to be concentrated there. Even loose tops could not hide this feature. Men often paid attention to Michelle, but she knew how to deal with this with dignity, gently but firmly refusing persistent admirers. She and Harry had been married for almost 25 years, and this approaching event gave them both mixed feelings. Their marriage has always been strong, filled with love and respect, but like any long-term relationship, they had their difficulties. One of these problems for Harry was their sex life. He couldn't help but notice that she had slowed down. Michelle insisted that she was happy with everything, but Harry couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't completely happy. He thought about it often, sometimes too much. His fears were fueled by stories he read about unexpected marriage breakdowns, affairs, and hidden grievances. The thought that Michelle might meet another man haunted him, especially considering that she always attracted the attention of the opposite sex. Harry was a man who was used to solving problems, not using them up. But in this case, he didn't know how to approach the issue without hurting Michelle's feelings. He didn't want to seem jealous or insecure, even though he was torn apart by doubts inside. He knew their relationship was based on trust and love, but his anxiety sometimes clouded his rationality. Harry tried to remind himself that he was overdoing it, with thoughts that he should just talk to Michelle, but the fear of being misunderstood prevented him. Michelle, in turn, noticed changes in Harry's mood. Her natural insight told her that something was bothering her husband, but he did not share his thoughts. She wanted him to open up, but she was afraid to insist, not wanting to turn the situation into a conflict. She loved Harry and was faithful to him, but sometimes she also had doubts. She wondered if she was disappointing him in some way, especially when it came to intimacy. In their youth, their relationship was passionate and full of emotions, but over the years a lot has changed. Michelle didn't see it as a problem, but rather as a natural part of their life together. With the anniversary approaching, Michelle decided to give Harry a little surprise. She began planning an evening that would remind them of the beginning of their relationship. She wanted this event to be not only a celebration of their love, but also an opportunity to restore that connection that seemed to have faded slightly under the weight of everyday worries. She understood that their marriage was not only a habit, but also a job that required effort on both sides. And although she didn't know about Harry's thoughts, she felt that such an evening could be something special for both of them. Harry was desperate to find the perfect gift for Michelle. This gift had to be not only beautiful, but also special one that would express all his love and appreciation for the 25 years they spent together. For Harry, Michelle was not only his wife, but also his guiding star, inspiration, and meaning of life. He was afraid to imagine what his life would look like without her. Her bubbly personality, never-ending flow of ideas, and infectious laughter filled their home with warmth and happiness. Together, they were better than apart, complementing each other perfectly. Her energy and creativity were in harmony with his calmness and prudence. And yet, choosing a gift turned out to be not such an easy task. Harry pondered his options for days, weighing the pros and cons. A vacation in an exotic country where they could feel young and carefree again, or a diamond ring, a symbol of their undying love. Each of these options seemed worthy to him, but none of them seemed unique enough to fully express his feelings. At a neighbor's barbecue, where they had gathered to celebrate the first truly warm day of spring, Harry shared his thoughts with Oliver. Oliver was the son of an old college friend, a talented and ambitious young man who was taking his first steps in a scientific career. Once upon a time, many years ago, Oliver's father, Tom, admitted to Harry that his son, although he has an outstanding mind, suffers from shyness and social awkwardness. Harry remembered this conversation as if it had happened yesterday. Inspired by Tom's sincerity, he offered to help Oliver by getting him a research internship at his company. And so that the young man could save on housing, Harry allowed him to live in a small extension next to their garage. In return, Oliver volunteered to help renovate the house, which turned out to be a beneficial solution for all parties. Since then, he and Oliver would often chat over coffee or, like today, at social gatherings. Oliver had already managed to transform. He became more self-confident, and his shyness gradually gave way to calm confidence. Harry even began to consider him part of the family. Now, standing at the grill and watching Oliver carefully turn the steaks, Harry decided to ask for advice. "You're young, Oliver. Tell me, what would you give a girl if you wanted to show her how important she is to you?" "I want to give Michelle an anniversary gift. You know, something that says everything she means to me." Oliver looked at Harry thoughtfully. His eyes sparkled with interest, as if an idea was already forming in his head. "Well, Mr. Harry," he began, smiling, "if you want something special, perhaps you should make something yourself. Not only buy, but invest your soul. Maybe it will be something related to your memories. For example, an album with photos and notes about your best moments. Or could you create something like a small garden or greenhouse, a place where you can spend time together and remember all those happy years?" Harry paused, considering Oliver's words. It was an unexpected but surprisingly accurate proposal. He remembered how Michelle always dreamed of a small corner where she could take care of plants and read her favorite books. Perhaps this was exactly what he needed, a gift that would not only symbolize their love, but would also make her happy every day. Oliver suddenly blurted out before he could stop the words from escaping his lips. "Oh my God, who is this? She's just amazing." Harry, who was sitting opposite him scribbling something on his notepad, looked up, expecting to see who he was talking about. His gaze slid to the side, instinctively searching for a young woman, perhaps someone's companion or a random passerby. But instead his gaze fell on a woman who entered the room carrying cups of tea on a tray. It was Michelle, his wife. For a moment, Harry was confused. He didn't immediately understand what exactly Oliver meant until he added, without taking his eyes off her. "She's just the perfect woman, so stylish, and her figure is something incredible." Oliver's words finally broke through the barrier of bewilderment, and Harry realized that it was his young colleague who was enthusiastically discussing. It was a strange moment. Unusual, even ridiculous, but not without a grain of truth. "This young man is my wife," Harry said in a firm voice, hiding a mixture of surprise, slight irritation, and pride. Oliver turned pale and then literally shrank from embarrassment. His shoulders slumped, his eyes darted to the table, and his face flushed, as if he had just been involved in the worst social embarrassment of his life. "I'm very, very sorry, Harry," he muttered hastily. "I didn't know at all that this was your wife. Sometimes I'm just a complete idiot. My mouth works faster than my brain." There was a short pause in the air. Harry sighed. He suddenly felt a little funny from this scene. Young, impetuous Oliver was always like this, without a filter, with genuine delight in everything he saw. It was annoying and touching at the same time, and his apology, so sincere, almost childish, dispelled the remnants of irritation. "It's okay," Harry finally said, leaning on the chair and smiling unexpectedly warmly. "You're right, she's really amazing." He looked away for a moment to where Michelle was busy with a tray, carefully arranging cups of tea. "Do you want to meet her? After all, you have to live next to us and work on the house." Oliver looked up, clearly taken aback by the reaction. "Are you really not angry?" he asked in disbelief. "I'm not angry," Harry admitted, feeling his voice become softer. "To be honest, I myself stopped noticing how amazing she is. Looks like I need to fix this." Oliver smiled, still embarrassed, but more confident. And Harry, thoughtful, looked at his wife with a new feeling. Her usual movements, gentle smile, and easy posture suddenly seemed to him like he had not seen them for a long time. Or perhaps he just wasn't paying attention. Now he couldn't help but notice. Harry introduced them to each other, avoiding mention of his recent words that might have embarrassed Oliver. Despite this, Oliver himself still felt a little tense, although he was grateful for Harry's tact. Michelle immediately put him at ease with her friendly manner. She began asking about family, work, studies. All this seemed sincerely interesting to her, and her friendliness was captivating. But even with such an easy start to the conversation, Oliver's face gradually turned red to his ears. He realized that his embarrassment was too obvious and tried to focus on her questions. When Harry stepped away briefly to chat with other friends, Michelle continued talking, asking questions and interjecting her own sparkling comments into the conversation. Oliver listened to her, but at the same time he realized that his attention was becoming more and more distracted. He tried to force himself to concentrate, but it was unbearably difficult. No matter how hard he tried, his gaze slid down to her chest again and again. It was stupid, inappropriate, but he couldn't help but notice how impressive her figure was. All he could do was blame himself for his inability to behave himself. And so, at the moment when his thoughts had completely lost their way, her sharp and unexpectedly direct question pulled him out of this state. "Are you enjoying the view?" Oliver flinched as if he had been caught doing something forbidden. The face became even more scarlet, if that was even possible. He began to mutter incoherent apologies, feeling that he was completely losing control of the situation. Sorry, I didn't mean to, I just..." But Michelle interrupted him with a smile that combined cunning and goodwill. "Try to keep your eyes above the neckline, okay? Honestly, you'll never find a girl if you stare at every woman like that." Oliver began to deny in desperation. I don't. I don't stare at every woman. It's not like that, I mean. Just you. You're beautiful. I, um... He stopped short, realizing that he was digging himself a deeper and deeper hole. He sighed and gave up. "Sorry, I should probably just stop digging, right?" Michelle laughed, lightly, sincerely, but with a bit of perky slyness. "In such situations, this is usually the best solution. But you know, you still got out of it. He said I was beautiful. No woman ever gets tired of hearing this." Oliver was relieved to note that she was not offended by his behavior, but took it all with humor. Her friendliness and ease of communication helped him relax, and after that their conversation became more relaxed. Michelle, despite this small incident, thought that Oliver was a pleasant young man. Shy, yes, but there was a charming sincerity to it. He turned out to be funny and charming in his own way. He was also handsome, a little awkward, with a mop of unruly dark hair that seemed to have a life of its own. Oliver himself also tried his best. He almost succeeded in keeping his gaze on her face and not below. However, deep down he knew that this was not easy for him. He's always been a little obsessed with breasts, not pathologically, of course, but enough to make him lose his head sometimes. And there was no doubt that Michelle had real and impressive breasts. The following week, Oliver began his internship. He studied and cooked his own meals in the evenings, not wanting to burden Harry and Michelle any more than he already was. Over the weekend, he enthusiastically completed a list of repairs. Michelle was worried that he had no personal life and insisted that he only work for a couple of hours in the morning. There was no rush. One Saturday morning, Michelle was going out for brunch with her friends, but she wasn't sure whether her new vintage sheath dress was the right fit for her. Seeing Oliver in the garden, without thinking, she asked him what she looked like. "You look amazing in any outfit." There was silence. Michelle stopped in her tracks and looked at him. Oliver blushed, desperately trying to think of something to make his comment seem less blunt. Now Michelle was embarrassed she shouldn't have asked him that. Well, that's good to hear, thank you. And I thought that it was difficult for you to flirt with women, but here you gave such a confident compliment. Oliver felt relieved, the tension was gone. Thank you, it's easy with you. I'm just telling the truth. With other people my words get confused. I think about something, start worrying about whether I'll like it, try to think of an alternative, and by the time something reasonable comes out of my mouth, they're usually gone. You need to tell the truth and not get carried away. Trust yourself, you're a good guy. Michelle left with a smile on her face, in an unexpectedly good mood and a little embarrassed. Are you serious? You want me to tease a guy who's half my age? Michelle laughed, shaking her head. Harry grinned, his gaze becoming a little more playful. I'm not saying jump on his neck. It's just a way to lift your spirits. Sometimes a little innocent flirting is all it takes to make a person feel more confident. And you? Well, you can use your charm if you want. Michelle leaned closer, looked at Harry appraisingly, and narrowed her eyes. Are you sure you're not jealous? Jealousy? Harry grinned even wider. Never. I'm sure we both understand that this is just a game. Michelle pretended to be thoughtful, but a light sparkled in her eyes. You know, Harry, you understand too well how such games are played. This gets me thinking. Oh, what thoughts? Why did you come up with all this to test me? She said with feigned seriousness, shaking her finger in his direction. Make sure you don't have to be jealous of yourself. Harry laughed, raising his hands in a sign of innocence. Okay, you win. But I'm sure that if you decide to tease him a little, it will definitely be the highlight of his life. Michelle smiled but didn't answer. She thought not so much about giving Oliver a gift, but about the strange duality of the situation, how easily Harry could play her and push her to such ideas while maintaining his good-natured charm. Michelle felt a little strange, but at the same time she was curious. She sat in front of the mirror, carefully examining herself in the new underwear that Harry literally persuaded her to try on. This bra has already caused her mixed emotions several times. On the one hand, it looked truly luxurious and emphasized her figure in a way that no other did. On the other hand, Michelle couldn't help thinking that it was too bold, too provocative. But Harry seemed to be absolutely delighted, repeating every time how gorgeous she looked. She noticed that this bra really attracted the attention of men. Whether on a walk, in a cafe, or even just at work, she caught everyone's eyes on her. Of course, it flattered her a little, but it also made her think. I don't know, she said to herself, adjusting the strap. It doesn't seem right. But maybe Harry is right, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'll think about it. When Harry first suggested she try this style, Michelle was surprised. He rarely expressed such bold ideas, although he always said that she should experiment with clothes more often. Maybe he was trying to add a little spice to their relationship, especially in the bedroom. The idea was certainly unusual, but for some reason it excited her. She might even have found it a little exciting. After all, it was something new, outside the boundaries of the usual, but at the same time, it did not go beyond the bounds of decency. Just a light flirtation with the outside world, which, in the end, brought pleasure to her. It's Saturday. Michelle spent a long time choosing what to wear to go with this bra. After much deliberation, she settled on a silk blouse that softly hugged her figure and allowed the bra to play its part. The look was completed with a fitted pencil skirt and high-heeled sandals. She stood in front of the mirror, feeling slightly nervous. This was a step forward, a step into something new for her, and she was not sure how others would react to it. But since Harry encourages her to experiment, why not give it a try? Harry was amazed when he saw her. He was almost speechless. His gaze immediately fell on her chest, which noticeably moved with every step she took. Wearing a thin silk fabric, this bra really created a statement look. You look amazing, was all he could say, continuing to look at her with delight. Michelle was pleasantly surprised by his reaction. Her confidence grew every second. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly attractive and desired. Her courage was rewarded not only with Harry's attention, but also with a slight note of pride in herself. "I didn't think it would have such an effect," she said with a smile, straightening her hair. In the evening, they went to a party with friends. The atmosphere was relaxed, and Michelle quickly got used to her new look. She noticed that not only Harry, but also other men were stealing glances at her. One of them, Oliver, clearly appreciated her appearance, despite his heroic attempts not to look too obvious. This gave her even more confidence. Michelle realized that all this remained within the limits of light flirting, and this made her feel even more liberated. By the end of the evening, Michelle had completely relaxed. She laughed, chatted, enjoyed Harry's attention, and felt great. This day became a kind of discovery for her. She realized that sometimes it is worth going beyond the usual in order to discover something new in yourself. And the main thing is that such experiments not only delight others, but also allow you to feel special. Michelle felt that Oliver needed some time to recover, so she decided not to rush him. She gave him a chance to catch his breath, to feel more confident, and then, noticing that the atmosphere between them had become less tense, she suggested taking a short break. Her voice sounded soft and relaxed, which was endearing. She added that it would be nice to have something to drink, maybe coffee or tea. This proposal sounded so natural that Oliver almost immediately agreed, and soon they were sitting at the table, chatting easily with each other. Their conversation turned out to be surprisingly easy and relaxed. Oliver, who is usually quite reserved, admitted that it can be difficult for him to communicate with people, especially with girls. He said that sometimes he feels incredibly shy, and that every time he tries to approach a girl, he feels awkward and insecure. Michelle listened to him with genuine interest, nodding at the right moments. She smiled, trying to cheer him up, and began to share her advice. Her recommendations were simple but effective. She said that the most important thing is to remain yourself, not try to pretend to be something, and let your words sound sincere and natural. Her advice was encouraging, and Oliver listened carefully, absorbing every word. Meanwhile, work on the front of the house was progressing well. Oliver, as it turned out, was a very skilled craftsman, and his labors brought visible results. Every time he took a break, Michelle tried to keep him company to make him feel more comfortable. He began to enjoy her company more and more. Her classic appearance and style, elegant but unobtrusive, literally attracted the eye. Sometimes, when Michelle turned away, Oliver allowed himself to linger on her a little longer, admiring her grace. These moments seemed almost magical to him, although he himself could not explain why. Meanwhile, Harry, Michelle's husband, couldn't help but notice how the atmosphere was changing between his wife and Oliver. It was almost tangible. At first, he thought that their communication did not go beyond the scope of friendship, but gradually something in their dynamics began to change. It was a strange cocktail of emotions for Harry. He understood that his feelings for Michelle were unchanged, but seeing another man look at his wife with such admiration was unusual for him. He began to notice that Oliver was increasingly finding reasons to stay close to Michelle, and she didn't even seem to realize how close they had become. Oliver, for his part, couldn't stop thinking about Michelle. She was more than just a friend to him. Her warmth, kindness, and listening skills made him feel like she understood him like no one else. Gradually, he began to share his experiences with her more and more openly, trusting her with his most intimate thoughts. He hung on her every word as if it were something priceless. He still couldn't find the right word for his feelings, but somewhere deep down he knew that it was falling in love. "Oliver's confidence has certainly improved markedly," Harry said thoughtfully, watching Michelle closely. She smiled, her eyes sparkling slightly. "Yes, he's just lovely," she said with genuine warmth before her voice became a little quieter. "It's so sad that he didn't figure it out sooner. He missed out on so much." Michelle hesitated, looked around as if checking to see if anyone was listening, and leaned closer to Harry. "He shared a secret with me," she whispered, as if the words she was about to speak were too fragile for a normal voice. Harry raised an eyebrow, signaling for her to continue. "He never had a serious girlfriend," she finally said, her voice shaking with regret. "I feel so sorry for him. At his age, this is simply wrong." Harry blinked, surprised. This is a surprise. Yes, this shyness bothers him, Michelle continued, frowning. And now it has become a huge barrier. He's so nervous. Sometimes it seems to me that he looks at the world through thick glass, afraid of breaking it. Harry nodded, looking at her with interest. Well, he doesn't have any problems admiring you and chatting with you. Michelle tilted her head slightly, as if weighing his words. I think it's because I'm older. It's safer for him. Harry narrowed his eyes skeptically. Nonsense. You are a very attractive woman, and you are simply a master at creating a comfortable environment for people. Although, he paused for a second before continuing with a sly smile. I noticed that you keep flirting with him. Do you like this attention? Michelle thought for a moment. A shadow of doubt appeared on her face. She leaned her elbows on the table and looked somewhere into the distance. I think there's something in it, she admitted quietly. He's cute, and I really enjoy his company. She smiled slightly, trying to hide her slight embarrassment. It's flattering when a young man says that I'm attractive. I also truly enjoy our conversations. Harry was watching her carefully when she suddenly added, Actually, I have a request. He became wary. Which? Do you mind if I go out to dinner with him? She said quickly, as if she was afraid that she would change her mind. Harry frowned, raising his eyebrows in surprise. Seriously? He asked again. Just so he can practice dating, she added hastily. I would show him how to behave at dinner and with drinks. I don't think he's very experienced at this. And, she paused for a moment, I sincerely want to help him find and keep a girl. Harry was silent, his gaze searching for something more in her eyes. Michelle narrowed her eyes, noticing his doubt. Harry, if it makes you uncomfortable, I won't go. It doesn't mean anything. He exhaled slowly. Do you understand that he is very passionate about you, maybe even a little in love? Michelle rolled her eyes, trying to brush off his words, but her hands treacherously clenched into fists. Come on, it's just harmless flirting. He must get used to communicating with women in order to stop being afraid. Harry was still hesitant, but his face softened. I think it can be done, just not here, so that you don't have to explain your charitable cause. She smiled, blushing slightly. Thank you, Harry. You are truly the best. Harry just shook his head, watching as her gaze became thoughtful again. Harry thought Michelle was trying too hard and looked too good for this date in a tight, sparkling turquoise dress. She was looking at her reflection in the mirror when she noticed Harry watching her. It's not too late to cancel everything. No, I have to go. We won't be long. She took her purse, kissed his cheek, squeezed his hand, and walked out to Oliver's car. Harry felt an uneasy feeling as he watched Oliver help her into the car. They had a great time at dinner. Oliver carefully selected topics of conversation, listened carefully to Michelle, and asked questions that not only showed his sincere interest, but also made her smile. His every gesture, every remark expressed attention and respect, which did not go unnoticed. Michelle, although not used to this level of attention, was pleasantly surprised at how easy and relaxed the conversation was. It seemed like they had known each other for many years. She even noted to herself that Oliver behaved like a real gentleman, which did not happen very often in her life. After dinner, at Oliver's suggestion, they headed to a cozy bar nearby. The atmosphere there was calm and relaxing. Dim lighting, quiet music, and the low hum of conversations created a feeling of coziness. At a table in the corner, away from other customers, they continued their conversation. Oliver casually remarked that his company made the evening special and smiled. His gaze lingered on Michelle a little longer than usual, and she noticed how he lowered his eyes slightly in embarrassment. Suddenly, he reached out and gently touched her palm. His fingers were warm, and the touch sent a slight shiver through Michelle's body. She looked up and met his gaze. At that moment, she noticed how beautifully his green eyes shimmered in the soft light of the bar. It was that same look that makes your heart beat faster. She felt her cheeks heat up and tried to pull her hand away, but something inside her prevented her. They froze, and the space between them seemed to shrink to a minimum. Their faces started to get closer, and it looked like a kiss was about to happen. But at that moment, the sound of a breaking glass echoed through the bar, making both of them flinch. Michelle quickly removed her hand, as if the sound brought her back to reality. She smiled, trying to lighten the situation. If this were a real date, this would be the perfect time for such a step, she said quietly, trying to make her voice sound as casual as possible. Oliver nodded slightly, but there was a hint of disappointment in his eyes that made Michelle's heart tremble a little. She knew that his reaction was completely justified, but at the same time she could not understand why she herself stopped this moment. They spent the rest of the evening in a more reserved manner. The conversation was still light, but now there was a subtle awkwardness in it. Michelle could feel thoughts swirling around in Oliver's head, but she didn't dare talk about what happened. When they returned home, Oliver, like a true gentleman, walked her to the car. They sat inside for a little longer, talking and exchanging jokes that no longer looked so funny. Inside, Michelle felt a strange mixture of gratitude for the evening and uncertainty associated with their relationship. Finally, she broke the long silence. "Thanks for the evening, Oliver. It was really nice." He nodded, but there was still tension in his eyes. Finally, he decided to speak. Now, if this were a date with a girl, maybe it would be time to take it a step further, he said, trying to sound joking, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Michelle looked at him, grinning, but noticed how he was trying to hide his concern. She decided to keep the conversation going. "And you're afraid that she might not want to, or worse, accuse you of harassment?" Oliver smiled shyly. "You know, today it's like walking through a minefield. You never know how your actions will be perceived. What if she doesn't say it straight? What if I get it all wrong?" Michelle looked at him warmly. She understood his doubts and knew how difficult it was to be confident in his actions now, especially when it came to expressing feelings. She replied thoughtfully, "I think she can let you know easily enough if something is wrong. The main thing is to be polite and respectful. For example, when in doubt, start with a light kiss on the cheek. This is always a safe option. And if things go wrong, just apologize and show that you respect her decision. Sometimes you have to be brave, even if it seems like a risk." His face relaxed, and he smiled slightly. "Thank you, Michelle. You always know how to diffuse a situation." She smiled back, and at that moment a slight silence fell between them again. But this time she wasn't as awkward as before. Oliver didn't have time to say or do anything before his instincts took over. He slowly leaned towards Michelle and kissed her on the lips. It was an uncertain, nervous kiss, as if he was afraid that her reaction would be negative, but at the same time he wanted it so much that he simply could not stop. Michelle, feeling the touch of his lips, froze in surprise. It was completely unexpected. She never thought that Oliver would dare to take such a step, especially so suddenly. Her first instinct was to pull away, but something in his gesture stopped her. Perhaps it was his sincerity or the desperate courage with which he decided to do such an act. She did not immediately return the kiss, and Oliver, sensing her hesitation, abruptly pulled away. His face instantly turned red, and his eyes looked first at her, then away, full of fear and embarrassment. "I'm sorry, he began, but faltered, apparently searching for words. "You talked about courage, and I've wanted to do this for a long time." He nervously adjusted the collar of his shirt as his gaze darted between her face and his hands. Michelle watched him silently, trying to cope with the wave of emotions. She saw him struggling to maintain his composure, although his tension was revealed by small gestures, the trembling of his hands, the nervous tapping of his fingers on his knees. "Oliver," she finally said, trying to speak softly, "everything is fine. Nothing bad happened." Her words were sincere, but she saw that they were of little help. Oliver clearly felt out of place. He took a deep breath and tried to smile, but the smile came out weak and awkward. "It's my fault," Michelle added, hoping to dispel his embarrassment. "I was flirting with you, and we are, in fact, on a date. This, well, is understandable to some extent." However, her consoling words did not improve the situation. Oliver only became more worried, apparently tormented by thoughts that he could ruin everything. He fidgeted in his seat, clearly contemplating how to apologize or make amends. Michelle realized that the situation required decisive action. She couldn't let him suffer over this. Without hesitation, she took a step forward literally and figuratively. She leaned towards him, took his face in her hands, and kissed him again, this time softly and confidently. This time it was different. Their lips met without the awkwardness they had before. It was a kiss that was no longer in doubt. Oliver relaxed, allowing himself to simply enjoy the moment. He timidly raised his hand, clearly intending to touch her, but not knowing how to do it. As his hand approached her breast, Michelle gently stopped him. "Oliver," she whispered, barely pulling away. "Everything is fine. Just relax." She took his hand and gently placed it on her shoulder. "Start here," she explained, trying to make her voice sound confident. "Slowly move your hand down. Always make sure your partner is comfortable." She guided his movement until his palm was on her chest. "That's it," she said, smiling, at first gently, and then a little more confidently. His hands became a little more confident, and she noticed him smiling, feeling more confident. "Oh God, this is so nice," he suddenly exclaimed, not having time to restrain his emotions. His words made Michelle freeze. This comment was so sincere that she couldn't help but laugh. But the laughter quickly gave way to realization. "Stop." She pulled away abruptly, as if suddenly remembering something important. "Sorry, Oliver, we shouldn't do this." She looked away, her face flushed with embarrassment and internal struggle. "I'm married. For God's sake." She grabbed her purse and hurried out of the car without even looking at Oliver. Her heart was beating wildly as she walked quickly home. When she got to the apartment, a new wave of emotions covered her. Harry had not yet returned, which gave her time to catch her breath and process everything that had happened. "Idiot, idiot, idiot," she whispered, pacing the room. Her thoughts rushed from one thing to another. She remembered how it all began, remembered his hesitant first kiss, his desire, his embarrassment. It all seemed so strange and wrong, but at the same time so exciting. "What am I doing?" she said out loud, stopping at the window. She looked outside, where light snow covered the ground with a white blanket. She thought about Harry, about his kindness, his care, about how he always tried for her sake. "I have the best husband in the world, and I do this to him," she whispered, feeling her eyes fill with tears. She knew it had to end. She must tell Harry everything. She must ask for his forgiveness and hope that he can understand her. The evening was drawing to a close. The weariness of the day seemed to fall upon them both, but the calm silence was suddenly interrupted by a question that seemed to hang in the air like a heavy weight. "How was your night?" Just 4 words, but their significance for Michelle was overwhelming. As soon as she heard this simple question, she felt her heart begin to pound wildly, and cold sweat appeared at her temples. The words got stuck in her throat, and before she could respond, tears suddenly flowed from her eyes. At that moment, it seemed as if the whole world had collapsed. Harry, as always attentive and caring, was immediately there. His arms instinctively reached out to hug her and comfort her, but Michelle, trembling, abruptly pushed him away. This movement was unexpected, almost desperate. "Forgive me, Harry." Her voice was barely audible, broken by sobs. "I made a terrible mistake today. I... we... we kissed. I mean, me and Oliver. I'm so sorry." The words finally left her lips, leaving behind a depressing feeling of emptiness. She squeezed her eyes shut, expecting an outburst of anger, furious words, or even a hint of accusation. But none of this followed. Harry was silent, his gaze more puzzled than angry. This moment of silence was almost unbearable for Michelle. "How far has it gone?" he finally asked, trying to remain calm, although his voice betrayed a slight tension. Her answer was like an avalanche, a confession burst out in a stream of words that she had been trying to hold back all evening. "We kissed, and I let him touch my breasts," she whispered, almost losing her voice from shame. Harry looked at her carefully. His face remained almost emotionless, although a shadow of something incomprehensible flashed in his eyes. He paused, trying to comprehend what he had heard. Did you let him? Didn't he force you? He clarified. His voice sounded soft, but there was a hidden depth in it. No, not at all, Michelle hastened to assure him. It was completely my fault. I knew that he liked me, and I should have stopped everything right away. Harry thought for a moment, as if he were trying to fit all the pieces of a puzzle into a whole. Did you want this to go further? He asked carefully. He's very attractive. Michelle shook her head, her eyes filling with tears again. No, I'm so sorry, I don't know what came over me. He was so confused, and I just wanted to help him, she explained, although she didn't fully understand what made her do it. The conversation continued until late at night. Like a broken cup, they tried to collect all the pieces of their relationship, discussing the smallest details of what happened. Michelle told everything honestly, without hiding a single nuance. Her voice sounded sincere, but it didn't take the weight off Harry. He felt strangely detached, as if he was watching it all from the outside. His mind resisted his emotions. Harry understood why things could happen the way they did. He knew that Michelle had sensitivity and compassion, which sometimes caused her to make impulsive decisions. He could understand that a kiss in a certain situation might seem like an act of support to her. But the fact that she allowed Oliver to touch her went beyond simple explanation. This made him wonder. Perhaps, deep down, she was looking for something more. Memories of the past resurfaced in his mind. Old fears, which he considered long forgotten, came to life with renewed vigor. What if Michelle really wants to leave him? Or even cheat on him? These thoughts crawled through his mind like poisonous snakes, poisoning every ounce of trust. But he didn't say anything. Instead, Harry listened to her, carefully peering into her expression, trying to find answers to his questions. They talked until fatigue got the better of them both. Barely touching the pillows, they fell asleep, exhausted, but not completely reconciled. The next morning, they had to decide how to live further with this burden, but now, in this quiet hour of the night, all that remained was the struggle with their own thoughts and the hope that love could overcome the pain. Michelle felt guilty. She could justify some of her behavior, but not all of it. It was a strange situation, but some strange feeling did not leave her. She realized with horror that it was excitement. It's been a few days since Harry and Michelle started preparing for their anniversary. They enthusiastically discussed the dinner they were planning to host, recalled memorable moments of their life together, and looked for the perfect gift for each other. Harry seemed particularly thoughtful, but Michelle chalked it up to his habit of making a big deal out of important events. On the evening when there was very little left before the anniversary, Harry suddenly broke the silence as they sat together in the cozy living room. Our 25th anniversary is coming soon, he began, his voice sounding confident, but at the same time there was something unusual in it. You have been the perfect wife all these years, Michelle. I've often wondered what the best gift I could give you is, and to be honest, I thought about this for a long time. In the end, I came to two options. Michelle tilted her head slightly, smiling, and put down the book she was reading. You always knew how to intrigue, Harry. And what are these options? She asked, genuinely interested. Harry froze for a moment, as if gathering his courage. Then he took a deep breath and continued. The first option is a diamond ring for eternity, something that will remind you of my love for you until the very end of our days. Michelle's eyes sparkled a little, but she refrained from interrupting her husband. She knew he wasn't finished yet. And the second, said Harry, and there was a slight tremor in his voice, the second is letting you spend the night with Oliver. Michelle snapped her head up, her eyes wide in shock. Oh, God, are you serious? She seemed stunned. Harry, I can't do this to you. Honestly, that night was a big mistake, and Harry raised his hand, interrupting her gently. I'm not joking, he said calmly, and I'm not sure it was a mistake. You and him have become very close, and I see how you are drawn to each other. You're both holding back, and it's like it's hurting you. If this is what you really want, I think I can live with it. Honestly, you have become more alive, more energetic since he appeared in our lives. And I feel like I'm losing ground a little. I just don't want you to miss out on anything important or be left unsatisfied. Michelle looked at him in confusion. She clasped her hands tightly as if trying to collect her thoughts. "I've never been unsatisfied," she answered, her voice sounding broken but sincere, "and I would never cheat on you. You know how much I love you, Harry. I—" "That's good," Harry interrupted her softly. "If he's not a threat to us and I can trust you both, then maybe I can handle this. Sometimes I think it's something you need to experience to understand yourself better." Michelle closed her eyes for a moment as if trying to process what she had heard. Then she looked at him and smiled, but her smile was a little sad. "Harry, I can do without this," she said, her voice soft, "but I really appreciate your offer. You are simply an amazing husband, and not many could offer such a gift." She paused and then suddenly laughed. "Or, is this just a very sneaky way to avoid buying me a diamond ring?" Harry smiled widely, relieved at her reaction. "Ha, yes, you figured me out. Am I that transparent?" They both laughed, and the tension in the room began to subside. Michelle leaned closer to him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for caring about me so much," she whispered. "But all I need is you, Harry. Just you." "Certainly. Here is an expanded version of the text." Although she was hesitant at first, after this conversation, Michelle and Oliver became much closer. Their relationship began to develop completely differently than before. They began to spend more time together, truly enjoying each other's company. They had many common topics to discuss, from work to life dreams. But most often their conversations concerned Oliver's failures in finding a girl. This was a topic that, oddly enough, brought them even closer together. Oliver joked, and Michelle laughed, encouraging him, but deep down she knew that there was something more behind these conversations. The truth was that since he met Michelle, other women ceased to interest him. She became something special to Oliver, someone with whom he felt completely himself. Every conversation, every smile, and every moment spent next to her filled his life with meaning. Michelle's thoughts, in turn, were also increasingly occupied with Oliver. She began to notice how she looked forward to meeting him again, how she found herself remembering their conversations and moments when they laughed together. Her heart sank more and more often at his gaze, and her thoughts became more and more contradictory. Harry and Michelle's anniversary party went exactly as they had planned. The house was full of close friends and family gathered together to celebrate their long and happy life together. The atmosphere was filled with joy, laughter, and warmth. The sounds of congratulations, friendly conversations, and music were heard everywhere. Guests enjoyed excellent food and drink, and dancing was the highlight of the evening. Harry and Michelle beamed with happiness, accepting congratulations and warm words from people dear to them. At some point during the celebration, they raised a toast and made touching speeches. Harry talked about how lucky he was to meet Michelle and build a life full of love and understanding with her. Michelle, in turn, shared memories of how their journey together was filled with joy and support. Both emphasized how important their loved ones gathered that evening were to them, and how much their enduring love for each other meant to them. As the evening gradually came to an end, the guests began to leave, and a feeling of comfort and satisfaction from a great time was in the air. Harry and Michelle sat together on the sofa, enjoying the silence after the noisy holiday. After a few glasses of champagne, Michelle felt that the moment had come for a serious conversation. "Harry, can I ask you one question?" she began, hesitating a little. He looked at her, his eyes full of understanding. "Of course, Michelle. What's happened?" She took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. "Would you really mind if I spent some time with Oliver?" Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Harry raised an eyebrow at her hesitation. "Don't be evasive, Michelle. What exactly do you want to ask me?" he asked, feeling that there was something more behind her words. She looked at him, trying to sound as sincere as possible. "Well, I guess I want to ask if I can sleep with him. He still doesn't have a girlfriend, and I think this could help him." She finally exhaled, feeling the tension release. Harry thought for a moment, and a slight smile appeared on his face. "So this is for charity, solely for his sake," he joked, trying to diffuse the situation. Michelle wrinkled her nose as she realized how that sounded. To be honest, no. I really like him. Very. I think it would be a wonderful experience for both of us to share something so intimate. Her voice was honest and open. Harry nodded, considering her words. I understand and appreciate your honesty, Mitchell. Yes, my offer still stands. If a 25-year-old beauty were to hit on me, it would be difficult for me to resist. He smiled, making her relax. I love you and I want you to continue to enjoy life and enjoy new experiences, whatever they may be. As long as it's a one-time thing and it's done with respect for everyone, I think I can handle it. As I get older, I become more relaxed and we have one life. Michelle looked at him, feeling mixed emotions. I don't know what to say or if I want to do it, but Oliver and I are getting closer and closer, and this is becoming more and more risky, she said, lowering her eyes. Her voice died down and silence reigned in the room. Michelle told Oliver that Harry was okay with them getting closer. He was amazed at the very idea that this could happen. The age difference didn't matter to him. He knew he was in love with her, and that's why he genuinely didn't want to do anything that could harm her or her marriage. The following week, Michelle quietly told Harry that Oliver was going to ask her out on Friday. The implication was obvious. Oliver was stunned when he and Michelle entered the restaurant that evening. He knew before that his companion was beautiful, but now it seemed to him that he was seeing her for the first time. Her evening dress was truly a work of art, a deep, dark burgundy shade that seemed to flow along the curves of her body. The fabric itself was delicate, thin, slightly sparkling in the twilight of the hall, where the soft light of candles restrainedly penetrated. The dress hugged the line of her hips, emphasizing their smooth roundness, and despite the fact that over time these forms widened a little, Michelle remained surprisingly harmonious. Her figure retained pleasant proportions, and the delicate roundness of her buttocks, emphasized by her heels, gave her appearance a special sensuality. These elegant shoes with thin straps elevated her above the floor, giving her posture a special pride and lightness. Oliver, standing nearby, felt his jaw literally drop in amazement. He couldn't find the words, couldn't hide his admiration. His eyes sparkled with delight, and something sweetly ached in his chest. Seeing this reaction, Michelle couldn't help but smile a little, knowingly, gently advising Oliver to shut his mouth. Her voice sounded quiet and mocking, but at the same time there was a warm feminine pride in it. She was pleased to catch such an adoring gaze on herself. Although the dinner and wine were exquisite, they sat at a table covered with a snow-white tablecloth, where the silver of the cutlery and glasses reflected the flickering of candles, and the gourmet cuisine melted in the mouth. The atmosphere between them remained tense. Not in a bad way, but in that special sensual tension that arises between people who are aware of their mutual attraction. Behind the quiet conversations about the past day, about acquaintances, about insignificant trifles, a spicy sensuality hovered under the surface of the words. Michelle knew that Harry, whom they had mentioned in passing, had gone to spend the night with friends, which meant they had the house to themselves. Every moment they seemed to be saving their strength for what would happen later when they were left alone without extra eyes and ears. After a few glasses of wine, pleasant but not overwhelming, they decided not to linger too long. A slight veil of alcoholic warmth gave determination, and the barely noticeable redness of Michelle's cheeks made her appearance even more lively. They left the restaurant, taking their time, walking through the quiet streets where the occasional streetlight illuminated their path. A light evening breeze touched Michelle's bare shoulders, playing with the folds of her dress. Oliver glanced at her imperceptibly from time to time, admiring her profile, the smoothness of her gait, the curve of her neck. Returning home, they crossed the threshold with a feeling of vague excitement. The space of the house greeted them with subdued light. Michelle opened the curtains in advance so that only soft moonlight, sliding along the walls and floor, penetrated into the room, and small table lamps created a cozy twilight. She wasted no time in taking the initiative into her own hands. With a slight gesture, full of confidence and grace, she led Oliver into the bedroom, where the bed with a voluminous bedspread and pillows seemed like an island of peace and temptation. When they found themselves in the semi-shade of the room, Michelle felt that the moment had come to stop pretending to be a modest lady from high society, that person who never goes beyond the bounds of decency. Now she wanted to show him her real nature, mature, feminine, liberated. She asked Oliver to unzip her dress. He, slightly nervous, but with obvious trepidation, approached and felt the coolness of the castle and silky fabric under his fingers. The sound of the zipper being unbuttoned sounded almost symbolic, like a musical accent, and the dress, as if obeying the invisible law of attraction, slowly slid down Michelle's body, gathering at her feet in a graceful woven puddle. Michelle appeared before Oliver in a corset of a deep shade that matched her outfit, and elegant stockings with lace elastic. The light of the lamp highlighted the thin waist, emphasized by the corset, making the silhouette even more feminine and seductive. Her breasts, neatly raised, looked as if they were made for admiring glances, and the delicate lines of her hips, slightly rounded, gave her figure a special mature appeal. Stockings with fine lace along the top edge looked like a detail designed to spark fantasy. Oliver stood there, unable to look away, filled with admiration, not even trying to hide his amazement. For him, who had known Michelle for a long time, always respected her maturity, intelligence, calm confidence, and style, seeing her in such an erotic image was almost stunning. In his mind, she suddenly turned into the embodiment of female sensuality, into a real goddess who came down from the clouds. He understood that before him was not just a woman in a corset and stockings, but a woman who had managed to reveal her innermost, intimate essence and entrusted it to him without a shadow of embarrassment. Michelle noticed how quickly Oliver's eyes lit up and how his lips trembled with delight, and this gave her even more confidence. And then he suddenly asked her to take a photo. This moment seemed a little daring. He took out his phone and, smiling shyly, said that he wanted to capture her as he saw her now divine, inspiring, awakening a whole range of emotions in him. Michelle, who had never stooped to such scenes before, was barely noticeable surprised at her own consent. At first, she only smiled slightly, but something inside her wanted to try this new role, this playful side of their relationship. She began to pose. To begin with, she only slightly stuck out her hip, putting her leg out so that her figure looked even more seductive. Then she lifted her chin slightly and glanced at Oliver, and that look was filled with promise. The corset emphasized her breasts, making the shape more defined, and the stockings seemed to flow into her hips, creating a feeling of boundless tenderness. She changed the position of her body, shifted her weight to the other leg, tilted her shoulder back slightly so that the play of shadows and light emphasized the graceful line of her collarbones and the curve of her neck. The photographs were soft, intimate, reflecting not just female beauty, but also a moment of intimate intimacy. However, Michelle decided not to stop there. She smoothly extended her hand towards Oliver, taking the phone from him. His amazement now turned into slight shock. He did not expect that she would want to photograph him too. But how could he resist? Michelle at that moment was a source of magnetism from which it was impossible to look away. Now she took his place behind the camera, and he found himself in the role of a model. Under her silent but eloquent gaze, he realized that he should relax. He took a confident pose, slightly tensed the muscles of his arms and shoulders, and turned so that the light of the lamp slid over his torso, outlining its relief. Michelle took pictures for a while, smiling when she saw how he was trying to look more courageous, more confident, more relaxed. However, while reviewing the footage she took, she noticed that Oliver was still overdressed. She wanted more frankness and equality in this sensual game. She barely had time to hint at this with a sly squint before Oliver began to take off his clothes without further ado. He first took off his jacket, slowly and carefully, then carefully undid the buttons of his shirt, revealing his chest and abs that, while not exactly bodybuilder standards, were nonetheless well-defined. Every gesture, every detail of what was happening had a special meaning for them, making the atmosphere more intimate, close, and trusting. When he was finally completely naked, their gazes met in the dimness of the room. Michelle felt a string of silent understanding vibrate between them. They saw each other as they rarely did in everyday life, confident, brave, open to new feelings. It was a moment of pure admiration for each other's beauty, a moment when there are no unnecessary words, no inconvenience, no embarrassment, but only two adults ready to enjoy the full richness of mutual attraction. So this scene dragged on, becoming more and more multi-layered, saturated with the aroma of perfume, the warmth of bodies and reflections of light on the smooth surfaces of furniture. Every movement, glance, rustle of clothes and silk stockings, soft touch of the carpet under their feet, vague whispers turning into quiet laughter, everything added up to an endlessly extended moment that they wanted to remember. These moments proved to be precious links in the chain of their relationship, redefining the boundaries of their intimacy, allowing them to penetrate deeper into each other than just words. At that moment, they became accomplices of a secret ritual that only the two of them knew about. Oliver's hands, like obedient conductors of his feelings, slowly slid over her satin corset, exploring every fold, every imperceptible bulge and smooth line. The thin fabric under his fingers felt almost ephemeral, like a breath of light breeze touching delicate skin. From the corset, his gaze moved to her long, slender legs, dressed in silk stockings, where each thread seemed to be woven from moonlight. He carefully, with almost reverent awe, unraveled the invisible web of clothing that until recently had hidden her body. He did it slowly, as if he was unpacking a priceless gift, revealing new facets of her beauty, new shades of her femininity. Each of his movements was thought out, but at the same time organically, born in the depths of his feelings and not in consciously invented steps of seduction. He was in no hurry. On the contrary, it seemed that he was trying to prolong this moment to infinity, immersing himself in the feeling of her presence, her body, her breath. Michelle felt this patient, caring attention that Oliver gave her. She felt how, under his hands, all her nerves turned into sensitive strings, ready to sound at the slightest touch. She loved the way he reacted to every detail of her body, to the slightest change in her breathing, to the subtle trembling of her lips. As Michelle arched her back, leaning forward, her breasts were closer to him. Oliver could not resist. Instantly pressing himself against her, he felt the warmth and softness of her form, as if plunging into the gentle foam of sea waves. As if a prisoner of his own desire, he moved even closer to kiss her, absorbing the taste of her lips, her breath. There was more than passion in this kiss. There was a whole universe of feelings, hopes, promises, and consolations in it. Breaking the kiss, he slowly lowered his head lower to fulfill another secret desire to touch her breasts with his lips. He did this with such reverence, as if before him was a rare work of art, worthy not of touching, but only of admiring glances and the most careful gestures. But Oliver didn't just look, he gave her affection, warmth, recognition of the uniqueness of every centimeter of her body. Michelle closed her eyes, surrendering to this moment. Her fingers gently touched his hair, willingly drowning in its softness, as if in silk fabric. Their unity continued to deepen. Now they were left alone in this almost stopped time and space, where external sounds and worries dissolved like smoke scattered by a light breeze. There was a soft, enveloping silence around them, like a thin cashmere blanket that gently wrapped their figures, protecting them from any noise or bustle of the outside world. The room was filled with penumbra, reflected on the walls like paintings by an old master, created to emphasize the intimacy of what was happening. The light of the candles played mysterious reflections on the ceiling, highlighting first one area and then another, drawing bizarre patterns that could be considered symbols of their feelings. Michelle's and Oliver's gazes crossed, meeting at a point where there were no more words, where no explanation was required. This silent dialogue that arose in the depths of their eyes opened the soul of each to the other. It contained trust, understanding, tenderness, the ability to listen and speak without words. Her gaze, warm, clear, was full of acceptance, and his reflected sincere gratitude for her presence, for the fact that she was here in his arms. Michelle carefully raised her hand, as if afraid to frighten away the fragile magic of the moment, and barely touched his face with her fingertips. She began her leisurely journey along the lines of his features, from the chin, slightly pointed and masculine, along the cheekbone arches, distinct and confident, sliding to the temples, where life throbbed, and back again, to the soft line of the lips. Her fingers caressed his skin so carefully that it resembled the movement of a feather weightlessly in contact with the warmth of a human body. Each of her touches felt something more than a physical sensation. It was like a message encoded in her movements, a signal of tenderness, of the depth of feelings that she wanted to convey without resorting to words. Oliver raised his eyelids, and in the dimness of the room his eyes flashed with the soft light of reciprocal tenderness. His breathing became even calm, as if he had finally found a quiet haven after a long sail on the stormy seas of life. Feeling her touch, he took her hand in his, leaning over her with a light but sincere smile. Raising her hand to his lips, he kissed her so carefully, as if he were holding in his hands the most precious vessel filled with the dew of feelings. This kiss was not just a gesture, it was a symbol of deepest gratitude, appreciation for her presence, for the intimacy that they shared now, for every moment that they lived together. Oliver then extended his arms towards Michelle, and she responded with a trusting gesture, allowing him to pull her closer. Their embrace was like the confluence of two rivers, slowly and smoothly flowing into one another, forming a single stream. Her head found its perfect place on his chest, as if it was made to lie there, catching every rhythm of his heart. His arms wrapped around her figure created a feeling of security, as if he stood guard over her peace, ready to protect her from any worries in the outside world. In the silence that floated around, only their breathing could be distinguished, even calm, like some kind of invisible music accompanying their closeness. Behind the walls of the room, a whole world could flow, full of bustle, noise, and haste. But here, in this refuge of two souls, harmony reigned. The candlelight continued to flutter, reflecting on the smooth surface of the furniture, on soft fabrics, on their bodies, giving the scene a touch of magic. Seconds stretched, turned into minutes, and those into endless moments. It was as if time had lost its usual meaning. They didn't need to speak. Every silent touch, every glance, every inhalation and exhalation was understood without words. Their mood, their feelings vibrated in unison. Michelle felt Oliver's chest vibrate under her cheek, catching the rhythm of his heart, a lively, steady beat, reminding her that he was real, that he was here, next to her. In this twilight, through the crackling wick of a candle somewhere, they could mentally retell each other thousands of stories. Michelle imagined images of their future, quiet evenings spent in front of the fireplace, long journeys along mountain roads, easy walks along the seacoast, where the wind would mix with salty spray. It seemed to her that every moment of their life, every moment of intimacy was a slender brick from which the majestic edifice of their connection was erected. Oliver, feeling the weight of her head on his chest, thought about how amazing the path had been that had led them to this point. I remembered her smile when they first met, her voice, soft and soothing, the moment when their eyes first crossed. He understood that their meeting was not an accident, but a gift of fate, designed to show that sometimes people find each other in order to become one story. Michelle raised her head slightly, her hair sliding over his chest, leaving a warm, pleasant trail. Their gazes crossed again. In the depths of her eyes, he saw a reflection of himself and her and their common moment. She was here with him, and it seemed to him that it had always been this way. Her smile was so sincere and warm that he wanted to hold on to this moment forever, as if trying to seal it in the amber of memories. Her hand found his cheek again, and then slid to his hair, caressing it, feeling the silkiness of the strands, absorbing every second of this closeness. Outside the window, it could be raining, or the moon could be shining, the wind could sing, or there could be complete silence. They didn't care. Inside this room, they created their own world, where only the two of them ruled. There was no fear, no haste, no doubt in this world, just two people who seemed to be able to read each other's thoughts through the warmth of their own bodies. Every inhalation and exhalation, every note of silence between them, everything turned into poetry, so subtle and transparent that not a single sound from the outside world could destroy it. It seemed that now they were standing on the threshold of something more than just physical intimacy, the threshold of complete unity of souls, when words become unnecessary, when feelings speak for themselves, when hugs replace all explanations. And in this silent harmony, stretched out for an endless moment, they continued to exist. Michelle and Oliver, two parts of one story, two lives intertwined in a single pattern of tenderness and trust. "Do you feel it?" he whispered, lightly touching her hair. "What exactly?" Her voice was quiet, but there was interest in it. "It's as if the whole world has disappeared, and there's only you and me." Michelle raised her head to look at him. There was a sparkle in her eyes that could mean both joy and deep affection. She leaned forward slightly. Their faces were very close. There was nothing left between them except a light whisper. Her lips touched his cheek, then slowly moved closer to the corner of his lips, but at the last moment she stopped, looking into his eyes. "I want this moment to last forever," she said, clinging to him again. He just smiled, hugging her tighter. Oliver felt her heart beat in time with his. This harmony was more important to them than any words. For some time they just sat there, enjoying the warm closeness. His hand slid down her back, gently soothing her as she listened to his breathing. "You're incredible, Michelle," he finally said. His voice was barely audible, but there was absolute sincerity in it. She answered him with a light smile, full of warmth. This moment was not about intense emotions, but about the calm, deep happiness they shared. After a few minutes of recovery, Michelle sighed. "It was incredible. It's just a brain explosion. You're better than in my wildest dreams," Oliver agreed. "We have the whole night ahead of us, dear. This is just the beginning, and I've already enjoyed it 4 times, so all bets are off." It didn't take long before Michelle noticed that Oliver was ready again. He gently bit her earlobe and whispered, "Now it's my turn." Oliver sat next to Michelle, running his hand over her arm. His touches were light, almost weightless, as if he was afraid to disturb the moment. Michelle smiled, enjoying the warmth that emanated from him and the feeling of calm that filled the room. "Are you always so attentive?" she asked, looking into his eyes with a smile. Oliver leaned forward a little to get a better look at her face. "Only with you," he answered, his voice sounding soft but confident. "You make me want to be better, more attentive." Michelle looked slightly embarrassed, lowering her eyes. "You say things that I don't know how to answer," she admitted. "I'm used to different relationships, more formal, and with you everything seems right." He touched her chin, gently lifting her face so that their eyes met again. "Because it's right," he said, looking into her eyes with the same sincerity that she so valued. "We don't have to rush or be anything else. Just be yourself." She sighed and smiled weakly. "It's so strange, you know. Being yourself sounds simple, but in reality. In fact, this is the most difficult thing," he completed for her. "But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Michelle gently touched his face, her fingers sliding along his cheek, feeling the light stubble. "You have no idea how important this is to me," she said. "After everything that happened, just to know that you are nearby." Oliver squeezed her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I want you to always know this," he said seriously. "You don't have to prove anything, Michelle. Just seeing you happy is enough for me." She grinned. "Are you always so correct? Is this your superpower?" "No," he smiled back. "My superpower is seeing you smile. And this is perhaps the most important thing I can do." Michelle laughed. Her laughter sounded loud and sincere. "You are incorrigible, Oliver, but it makes you so real." "Did you think I was playing a role?" he asked with a slight mockery. She shook her head slightly. "No, it's just that sometimes it seems to me that this is a dream, and I'm afraid to wake up." He leaned a little closer, their faces only centimeters apart. "If this is a dream, Mitchell," he said quietly, "then I want to sleep forever." She didn't answer. She just squeezed his hand tighter, allowing herself to relax and trust him completely. Their silence spoke more than words, and in that moment they were absolutely happy. He gently pulled out of her and pulled her towards him, hugging her tightly and tenderly. In slight confusion, they enjoyed the aftertaste of their intimacy. They sat next to each other on the edge of a large double bed, covered with a soft, pleasant-to-the-touch blanket, the color of a ripe plum. The room was in twilight. The dim light of the night lamp painted strange shadows on the walls, and outside the window the rain was falling quietly, melodiously knocking on the windowsill. There was a tense but strangely attractive silence between them, the air thick with emotions, embarrassment, jealousy, curiosity, and excitement. Harry and Michelle had just gone through something new, different, risky, and experience that could equally change their bond or strengthen it. Michelle ran her hand lightly through her hair and looked away, as if she wasn't entirely sure whether to continue the conversation. But feeling the vibration of her own thoughts and realizing that Harry was waiting for her words, she looked at him again. Her eyes sparkled, reflecting either a spark of passion or the remnants of slight tension. The voice sounded quiet but confident. "I understand that it was hard for you. You wanted this, you pushed me, but you probably didn't expect how difficult it would be emotionally. I'm not judging you, I'm not blaming you, I'm just trying to understand both of us. We have entered territory where the borders have not yet been marked." Harry nodded, sitting a little awkwardly. He felt a strange mixture of feelings mixing inside. Jealousy and excitement were now woven into each other so closely that he could not separate them. He wanted to know the details, but every detail cut to the quick. It was difficult for him to admit to himself that part of him felt a sharp, almost forbidden pleasure when he thought about Michelle being with another man. He smiled weakly, ran his hand through his hair, and chuckled, as if at his own weakness. "I really thought it would be easier for me," he said quietly. "I imagined what it could be like. I thought knowing that you were enjoying would make me feel proud or even excited. But at the moment when you were with him, something strange, painful filled your consciousness. Now that it's over, I'm trying to figure out what hurt me the most, your pleasure or my idea of what our relationship should be." Michelle leaned a little closer to him. Her voice became softer, and her hand slid along his thigh, carefully and caringly. "It's natural. We are people, and we learn. I would never have done this if you hadn't suggested it. You wanted to explore new sides of our relationship, and I trusted you. Now that this has happened, we need to figure out where to move next." I was very pleased. I felt beautiful, desired, liberated. His look, his touch, the way he greedily wanted me, all this excited me, gave me strength, as if I had become the center of the universe. And at the same time, I had a sense of control. I understood that I was allowing myself to be different, bolder, rich in emotions, and it was truly exciting. Having said this, Michelle noticed that Harry, although tense, still reacted to her words. She felt a subtle pulsation of excitement emanating from his body. His eyes became a little darker, his breathing deeper. She decided not to stop, and this was a kind of game, testing his reaction, clarifying new boundaries, expanding the possibilities of their intimacy. "He was really in good shape," she continued, drawing out her words like light silk. "His muscles, defined and strong, seemed to support my every movement. He was neat, respectful, and at the same time incredibly passionate about me. I saw passion in his eyes, so hungry, as if he was delighted with the very fact that I belonged to him at that moment. I loved hearing his breath on my neck, feeling the tension of his arms covering my body, and every time he brought me to that sweet edge, I felt like a goddess commanding male desire. It was unbelievably bright, like a powerful electric discharge." Harry listened to this, feeling the painful stings of jealousy and growing, almost unbearable excitement mixing inside him. His imagination worked with all its might, drawing vivid scenes that simultaneously repelled and attracted. He understood that, despite the discomfort, a new dimension of intimacy had settled in his mind, mysterious and pungent, like the taste of a rare spice. Now he not only knew that Michelle could be with someone else, he saw how her story gave him adrenaline attacks, how his heart beat faster, how the blood rushed to his groin at the sound of her voice. Michelle noticed this reaction and moved her hand a little further, allowing her fingers to linger a little longer in the place where his tension became obvious. Her lips parted slightly, the corners of her mouth twitched into a sly smile. "It seems like part of you found something interesting in this," she said, lowering her voice to a light whisper. "Maybe you like to imagine me with other men. Maybe the thought that I can enjoy someone else makes my hugs even more desirable for you." She paused to let him digest her words like a sip of strong drink, burning his insides and causing him to become quietly intoxicated. Harry closed his eyes for a moment, trying to formulate a response, but the words wouldn't come. He felt embarrassment, shame, excitement, and a strange release inside him. Finally, he decided. Maybe, maybe there's some kind of spark in this. I don't yet understand what this means for us, but I can't deny that your story, the way you describe your feelings affects me. Michelle chuckled lightly, raising her hand and playfully running a finger along his collarbone, then along his neck, resting it on his chin and lifting his face slightly to meet his eyes again. Her gaze was warm and understanding, and her voice was enveloping like a velvet ribbon. It's normal not to fully understand. We are taking our first steps in a new territory where there are no roles and rules yet. I love you and want you to be happy. If you like to imagine me in other situations, if you want to explore your anxiety, then I am ready to talk about it, explore it with you. Her breath touched his lips, and she kissed him so tenderly, as if thanking him for his courage. Then her kiss became deeper, hotter, reflecting the layers of emotions they were both feeling right now. Her tongue gently slid across his lips, inviting him into a game that now seemed freer than ever before. They sat like that in a strange, new space for them. There were no longer the same clear boundaries between them. Instead, there was the possibility of new scenarios, an expanded sensory experience in which their love could change shape, stretch, and contract like breathing. Michelle slowly, languidly continued to tell the details, about the touch of that man, about how she felt his bodily heat, about how he whispered compliments to her, about how she felt her own power and freedom. Harry listened, trembling internally, but no longer from horror or pain, but from a strange, pulsating excitement, combining jealousy, admiration, and a range of shades of desires unknown to him before. The longer she talked, the more multifaceted their feelings became. He ran his hands along her back, then lower, and felt her shudder partly from the memories, partly from the present moment, where they were together again, close, as if there were no strangers. So they stretched out the time, savoring every emotion, every nuance of words and sensations. Their body and mind became open pages for new experiences. There were no more accusations in their conversation, only burning curiosity and a willingness to explore their limits. Michelle went on to describe how she felt like a queen, surrounded by attention, and how she loved the idea that Harry might secretly be inspired by it too. And Harry let these thoughts into himself more and more, turning jealousy into fuel for his own fantasies. In the end, they both turned out not to be victims of this situation, but co-creators of a new form of intimacy. And when Michelle finally fell silent, pausing and pressing herself against his chest, Harry hugged her, realizing that their relationship had crossed the threshold of ordinary jealousy and ordinary passion. They entered a wider space where they could talk about desires honestly, explore new facets, and become more and more confident in each other. The rain outside the window continued to rustle quietly, as if approving their courage to dissolve in these new sensations as long and deeply as they wanted. The idea that his conservative 49-year-old wife had slept with a man half her age seemed preposterous. But here they were, and there was excitement mixed with jealousy. Harry fidgeted, unable to reconcile all his conflicting feelings. I suppose, in a sense, yes. Michelle unzipped his fly and started stroking him. I saw your browsing history. This is something you've been thinking about for a long time, isn't it? You can confess to me. We need to be honest with each other. Harry looked worried and didn't answer. Tell me, do you want this, baby? Do you want me to be a hot wife? Do you want me to have sex with other men? I don't know, it always turns me on that men find you attractive. Last night surprised me, it was almost like I was proud of you. I think the erotic thing is that you are so sexy that you think about it, prepare for it, and want it. And the fact that you have this passionate, lustful side that you realize. I also discovered this side of myself. I know you like it when I flirt and dress a certain way. I can do this more often if you will always be my support. Last night made me feel welcome. My confidence has grown incredibly, and I feel so much better. If it makes us both happy and we're honest with each other, maybe we can explore it further. I love you more than ever. It doesn't threaten us at all. You mentioned other men. Does that mean it's not just Oliver? He needs to find a girl his own age. I think it would be dangerous to get too close to just one. This will be so fun. I will become your own hot wife, but you will remain my husband. You've gotten through the hardest part, and I promise I'll stay committed to you. We'll do it together. Come for me, honey." With these words, Harry released a huge stream straight onto Michelle's skirt. God, it's all over the place. It looks like it's really turning you on. That night, they made love with renewed passion. There was clearly an element of return in the way Harry took possession of her. Michelle preferred his gentle and attentive caresses, but understood that his desires were influenced by her time with Oliver. Michelle had never felt so liberated and confident. They indulged in passion until late at night. This hasn't happened to them for many years. "Did you wear this skirt for me or for others?" Michelle smiled. "You know the answer to this question." Harry watched his beautiful wife at the barbecue. She was still wearing her favorite pencil skirt, but this time it was leather. The heels were higher, and again she was wearing that same bra, only now under a satin blouse. He thought she looked amazing and couldn't take his eyes off her sexy ass as she walked by, like many other men, judging by their reaction. Harry noticed a young guy who was quite openly looking at Michelle. Turning to look at him, Michelle met his gaze and a small smile appeared on her face. As she walked past, Harry noticed that the guy said something to her. Michelle stopped and started talking to him. Harry felt nervous as Michelle sat down next to him. She touched his hand, continuing the conversation, and the guy gradually moved closer. Harry watched as his beautiful wife flirted with a young guy, and Michelle glanced at Harry as if checking his reaction, and then winked at him. They continued talking. Perhaps 20 minutes passed. Suddenly, she found herself next to Harry, looked worried, and timidly asked, "Are we all right?" Harry mumbled a vague answer. Her excitement was obvious. She started babbling that his name was Dan, and he was a very relaxed and nice guy. "Talking to another man, knowing you were watching, was incredible." I was nervous and excited. "Well, you'll have a lot of candidates. You charm all the men here. But it's probably better for me to stick to the single ones. Some of the wives look like they are ready to attack me." At home, Michelle explained that flirting turned her on. She liked sharp conversations and hints, and it was also flattering to see how men appreciated her. Harry felt the tension between them rise. This moment was like a frozen frame from a film, where every movement is significant, every word is significant. He took a step forward, trying not to frighten off this fragile, but such an attractive balance. Michelle didn't back down. Her gaze remained firm, but there was something more in it, hidden softness, readiness for the unexpected. "You are sure?" she asked quietly, as if checking if they were both ready to take this step. "More than," Harry replied, his voice sounding hoarse, as if the very tension between them was affecting every note. She let him get closer, and their breaths mingled in this tight space. He gently touched her shoulder and then ran his hand down, feeling the warmth of her skin through the thin fabric. Her slight sigh only confirmed that she wasn't going to object. On the contrary, it was as if she had been waiting for this moment. "You are so beautiful," he said, without looking away. His words sounded sincere, almost in a whisper. Michelle smiled slightly, her lips twitching with subtle embarrassment. She wasn't one to easily give in to compliments, but now it sounded so right, so natural, that she couldn't help but respond with a soft look. She stepped closer, their hands touched, and this simple movement seemed to explode the air around them. Harry gently brushed a strand of hair out of her face, feeling his heart beat faster. He wanted this moment to last forever. "Harry," she said his name, and there was so much warmth in that one word that he could barely resist the urge to pull her closer. "Yes," his voice became a little lower, waiting for continuation. "Just be yourself. That's enough," she said, and there was more than just a call in those words. It was a promise. They both knew that this moment would be the start of something new for them, and perhaps the best is just beginning. They had sex twice, and then again in the morning. After morning sex, Michelle exhaled a low, drawn-out breath. "Well, we can say with confidence that flirting really turns you on. You were great." The next evening, they discussed everything over a bottle of wine. Harry admitted that he enjoys dressing up and flirting. Michelle focused on the fact that the sex after such moments was simply incredible. Who were you thinking about, me, Matt, or Dan from last night's barbecue? To be honest, everything was mixed, mostly about you, sometimes about them. Realizing that I could attract young, handsome guys and be so confident when interacting with them was a real revelation for me. At 49 years old, I realized that I loved to flirt. Harry had doubts and concerns about where this might lead, but their sex life became more frequent and intense, and being married to a sexually confident woman opened up a whole new dimension to their relationship. Michelle assured Harry that she loved him more than ever. Would you like to see Dan again? Michelle's eyes widened and she hesitated. He was nice, but I'm not sure about meeting people we know. We can trust Oliver, but I'm afraid others may boast about their conquests. Maybe we should limit ourselves to just flirting. Yes, that's a good point. I think you're right. We could explore online groups or contacts together to find out more. Later, after opening a second bottle of wine, already slightly drunk, they began creating Michelle's profile on a popular dating site. For women and couples, free registration allowed them to view other participants. Michelle was impressed by some of the single men before they started filling out their profiles. Harry wrote a description. Hot wife, 49 years old, luxurious figure 38DD, 30, 34, light brown hair, married, looking for dates and pleasure. He edited one of their vacation photos, where Michelle was wearing an elegant turquoise evening dress, cropping the photo and blurring her face so she was unrecognizable. Then he got an idea and did the same with one of the photos Oliver took. You can't post a photo of me in a corset and stockings. Oh, I can. You look incredibly sexy. In addition, most of the women on the site pose in underwear or without it at all. With these words, Harry uploaded the photo. Michelle woke up late the next day with a bad hangover. After drinking water, taking aspirin and showering, she felt a little better. Noticing the laptop, she vaguely remembered them filling out the profile the night before. Nervous, she opened it and went to the website. She was relieved to see that the photo still looked anonymous even in daylight, but she still winced at how the corset barely contained her curves. She then noticed the number in the corner of the screen increase from 230 to 231. After checking, she realized that this was the number of likes on her profile. Nervously, she clicked on some of the comments. The first three read, "Just amazing, such an elegant and beautiful lady. Would you like to get to know each other better, perhaps on a date? Chris, 26. A fantastic figure, so glamorous, and at the same time, married, it's even more piquant. I'm ready to be your bull anytime. John, 37. With 8 inches of dignity. I wouldn't stop doing this with you all day long. Richard, 18. 18. Oh my God! Michelle slammed her laptop shut with slight panic. As she calmed down, she realized that she felt good, very good, knowing that literally hundreds of men found her attractive. She later showed the responses to Harry, who found them funny, especially the more explicit comments. He reassured her, saying that they could always stop it or adjust the filters because it did not oblige them to anything. First, they selected the working professionals filter. The discussion of age sparked a debate. Definitely younger, but no 18-year-olds like Ryan. Michelle blushed embarrassedly, and they settled on the 25-40-year range. The location within 150 miles, excluding their city, significantly narrowed the field of candidates. For physical attributes, they selected athletic, or fit. There was an option to filter by manhood size. Your size is perfect for me. But this is all for the sake of something new. What was Oliver like? Perhaps a little bigger than you, about 7 inches, I think. And you liked it. Yes, I liked it. Just saying that made Michelle feel a slight thrill. Here's your answer, 7 inches plus. No, I don't want anything huge. It would just be uncomfortable or painful. I can't imagine how actresses can stand it. They're probably training. Just mark 7 and, maybe 8. The filter returned 28 matches. A quick check eliminated even more candidates based on appearance and other elements of their profiles. Any hint of arrogance automatically led to elimination, leaving 11 in the end. They thought about the next step and decided that Michelle would send them a standard message. "Hello, thanks for replying to my profile. I liked yours. It would be great to chat and see if we're right for each other." It didn't take long before notifications for new messages appeared. Curious, they began browsing through the incoming responses. Some were funny, most were pretty relaxed, and some were a little weird. They responded to those they liked, gradually relaxing in the secure correspondence on the site. Over time, the list narrowed and a favorite emerged, James. Michelle communicated with him regularly through the site. She exchanged photos, including pictures of herself in underwear, which Harry took at her request, and James sent mostly photos of his torso. Michelle had just logged onto the site when a photo of her impressive figure appeared in front of her. She didn't expect this and almost choked on her tea. She told Harry, "Do you mind if I send him a topless photo in return? It seems like a fair exchange." James' response was more than enthusiastic. He complimented Michelle on her amazing curves and told her what he would like to do with them. Michelle turned to Harry. "You know, he probably satisfies himself when he sees me." "I'm sure that's true. It's a little exciting, don't you think?" The next contact was chat via the website. They had a cozy conversation before James asked if they could do something sexual. Michelle invited James to undress and was surprised at how quickly he complied. She couldn't take her eyes off his six-pack. He was so toned and athletic that she just caught his words. "And shorts?" Michelle cleared her throat. Yeah." James sat in front of the screen, feeling a slight excitement that, despite all his efforts, could not be hidden. He often felt confident, but now it seemed as if his usual composure had evaporated. Michelle appeared on the screen, her calm smile and relaxed posture immediately establishing a special connection between them. There was a slight mystery in her gaze, as if she knew more than she was ready to say. "Well, is everything okay?" Her voice was warm, with soft notes of playfulness, but at the same time serious enough to make it clear that she was waiting for an answer. James swallowed and said with difficulty, "Yes, everything is fine." A barely noticeable smile touched her lips. She tilted her head slightly, looking at him carefully, as if trying to understand what was going on in his soul. "Relax," she said almost in a whisper. "Just trust me." James took a deep breath. He felt the tension gradually release. Her voice sounded so soft that there was no point in resisting. For a moment, Michelle disappeared from the frame. James noticed his heart beat faster. He felt that something important was about to happen, something that he could not even predict. When she reappeared, it was a real spectacular moment. She stood so that her figure was completely reflected in the camera, framed by soft light. Her red peplum, black stockings, and heels created an image of elegance and confidence. James involuntarily held his breath, unable to look away. Michelle slowly walked around the chair she was sitting in and returned to her seat. Her movements were confident and slightly theatrical, as if she were playing a part in an elaborate production. She sat down in front of the camera, tilting her head slightly to the side, and looked at him again with her tenacious gaze. "Just do as I ask," she said softly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. James felt his breathing become a little deeper. Everything that was happening was something new for him, but at the same time incredibly natural. "Well, what do you think about me?" Michelle and James had a casual conversation that gradually became more personal and frank. James, without hiding his admiration, spoke of her sophistication and bright attractiveness. He noted how her style and confidence are mesmerizing, adding that her charm combines elegance and sexuality. Michelle smiled, slightly embarrassed by his compliments, but at the same time feeling confident. She flirtatiously teased him, hinting at how easy it was to spark his imagination by simply adding a subtle accent to his look, such as stockings or heels. James, inspired by her words, allowed his imagination to run wild, carefully sharing his thoughts. "You're so gorgeous that sometimes it's hard for me to find words," he said, his voice sounding a little quieter, as if he was afraid of ruining the magic of the moment. "Your manners, your style, it's all so fascinating, and I can only imagine how I could lose my head next to you." Michelle leaned forward slightly, as if by accident, but there was a slight playfulness in her movements. "Fantasy can sometimes give emotions that cannot be compared with anything else," she answered with a warm smile. "But sometimes the most interesting thing is leaving something unsaid, right?" James smiled faintly, realizing how skillfully she moved their conversation from the realm of the obvious to subtle hints. He liked how her confidence and sense of proportion created an atmosphere of mystery. "You're right," he answered quietly. "That's probably why you seem so mysterious to me. Every time I think I understand you, you reveal a new side." Their conversation flowed from humorous remarks to deeper thoughts, creating an atmosphere of slight tension and interest. Michelle enjoyed the way her words and gestures affected James, and he, in turn, caught her every phrase, pondering the hidden meanings. "You know how to keep things interesting, Mitchell," he admitted, sighing slightly, "and it drives me crazy, but in a good way." "Maybe this is the secret of interesting conversations," she replied, her eyes sparkling with pleasure. "Do not reveal all your cards at once, but give a little space for imagination." They continued to talk, feeling a special connection emerge between them, based on respect, light flirtation, and sincere interest in each other. "How was that for you?" "Amazing, you are something else. Can we meet? I really want it." "I'm sure this can be arranged. We'll get back to you by." Michelle closed her laptop and looked at her husband at the far end of the room. "Everything okay, baby?" Harry swallowed and nodded. "Climb over the table. Now." Michelle took a long, luxurious bath, soaking in the bubbles. She dried and styled her hair before applying makeup. She wanted to look good by adding eyeliner, mascara, and eyeshadow, as well as bright red lipstick. She was preparing for her lover and her own pleasure. The thought was intoxicating. She gathered her makeup and grabbed the sheer black stockings she had chosen to go with her form-fitting taffeta dress. It had a low cut and a significant thigh-high slit. "Baby, can you attach the back suspenders? I can't reach." Harry did so, his hands shaking. He gulped when he saw the stitches, remembering the comment about the woman being ready for sex. "Do you want to wear my panties?" Harry nodded and carefully helped her put on a small, dainty thong that only emphasized her curves. He thought about it, knowing that soon she would be sharing this moment with someone else. "You can give him a little kiss, darling." He touched her lips, feeling her growing excitement. But Michelle only allowed herself this moment for a moment before she gently broke it. "Damn, not too much, Harry. I want to save myself for James. Help me put on my dress." Michelle was delighted with Harry's response and support. He seemed to be handling things well. She walked up to him and kissed him on the cheek. "Are you ready?" Michelle was attracting a lot of attention at the bar where they had agreed to meet James at lunchtime. They had just sat down in the booth when James appeared. He was over 6 feet tall, looked even better in person, and exuded confidence. He introduced himself by addressing Harry directly and asking if he would mind him talking to Michelle. Michelle thought it was a sweet gesture. The three of them were chatting casually, with James paying more attention to Michelle, and a flirtatious mood was creeping between them both. James said he had been in similar situations before, meeting couples through dating apps, and that they had a wonderful shared experience. With that, he gently took Michelle's hand, commenting on how much he loved the feel of her soft skin. He continued talking without letting go of her hand. After 10 minutes, he let go of her hand and placed his hand on her knee. "I like the feel of nylon." Harry watched as his hand slid up Michelle's thigh and squeezed it gently. She was clearly excited. "Your legs are amazing, and I just felt the top of your stockings. Women in stockings are so erotic. It's one of my favorite things." Michelle melted slightly, sighing softly. They continued to chat casually, with James showing genuine interest in their past and what led them to this situation. They explained that this was a new and experimental experience for them, but it certainly would not involve domination or humiliation of either party. Harry watched as James leaned in to whisper something in Michelle's ear. Laughing at his words, she placed her hand on his thigh and turned to face him. It wasn't just a light kiss. After a few seconds, Harry saw her mouth open and their tongues met. It was a long, sensual kiss. When the kiss finally ended, they looked at each other. Then Michelle turned to Harry with a small, embarrassed smile. "Just breathe, honey. It's okay. We're still friends." Harry realized he had been holding his breath. James spoke first. "You're really lucky. Your wife is really hot. I think you both should be commended for deciding to spice things up in your relationship. It could be an amazing experience for all of us." They returned home, Harry driving and James and Michelle sitting in the back seat, hugging and talking. When they got out of the car, they kept their distance to avoid the neighbor's gaze. But as soon as the door to the house closed behind them, they pounced on each other, kissing passionately, and Harry just stood there and watched. Michelle looked down. "I think we better release this before it gets too uncomfortable." She carefully unbuttoned James's top, as if studying every detail of his look. Her hand touched his shoulder, and in this gesture one could feel tenderness and trust. "You never cease to amaze me," Michelle whispered with a smile, her voice sounding soft, but with a slight hint of excitement. James looked at her warmly, understanding her mood. Michelle turned her gaze to Harry, who stood a little further away, watching them. "Harry, help me," she said, holding out her hand. Harry moved closer and began to slowly unfasten the clasp on her dress, being careful not to disrupt the moment. His touches were light, almost tremulous, as if he was afraid to disturb this fragile harmony. As the dress gently slid down, revealing Michelle's graceful silhouette, James couldn't look away. "Thank you, darling," she added, touching Harry with her palm. James reached out his hand, touching her shoulder. Their gazes met, and in that moment there was everything trust, sincerity, and a feeling of closeness. "Sit on the sofa, James." Michelle sat on his lap, facing Harry. Her legs spread in stockings and heels looked amazing. "I think you should watch me ride it for the first time, but I won't do it without your permission. So, what do you say, Harry?" Harry heard himself say, "Do it, Michelle. Have sex with him." "Okay," she said quietly, leaning closer and touching his hand. It took a while, but soon there was a special intimacy between them that made her feel warm and awe. "Oh, that feels so good, darling. I feel so happy," she whispered with a smile. She began to move, as if playing in a dance, in which every gesture was filled with sincerity. Michelle looked at Harry without looking away, her eyes sparkling. Finally, she spoke in a soft voice. "Sorry, honey, I was so carried away. Why don't you relax? I want you to feel special too." The way she calmly described sex with another man was both frightening and exciting to Harry. James and Michelle looked at each other, changing positions as Harry undressed. She smiled at him, creating a slight and sensual tension between them. James hugged Michelle, their movements became more synchronized and confident, which caused involuntary delight among all three. With each passing moment, their interaction became closer and more trusting. The harmony that arose between them was something new and exciting for everyone. As the tension reached its climax, they felt both a release and a closeness that was difficult to describe in words. After catching their breath, they hugged each other, enjoying the feeling of calm and peace. Michelle looked at Harry, her eyes shining with tenderness and gratitude for this moment filled with something special. "Now, honey, we're going to need some privacy to do this a few more times, so we'll go to the bedroom." She stood up. She extended her hand to James and led him towards the stairs. A few minutes later, Harry heard the characteristic sounds of a creaking mattress and bed, accompanied by the moans of his wife and the hoarse sounds of her new lover. Harry drank his beer and then walked up the stairs to look into the bedroom. He saw Michelle lying on her back with James thrusting into her furiously. Michelle met Harry's gaze and smiled, moaning, asking James to have sex with her harder. He went downstairs again, torn by conflicting feelings, not knowing whether this excited him or disgusted him. He went for a walk around the village, trying to put his thoughts in order. Returning to the kitchen, Harry found James and Michelle in a rather revealing situation. They clearly forgot that they were in a common house. Michelle glanced over her shoulder at her husband and said with a slight smile, "Hello, dear, we won't be long." Harry froze, not knowing what to say or how to react. He didn't expect this in his own home. Feeling it was best to give them privacy, he silently turned around and walked into the living room. There he tried to distract himself, but the sounds of what was happening from the kitchen followed him until after a while everything died down and the couple went upstairs. By 7 in the evening, James entered the kitchen and sat down at the table. He looked tired. "Wow, what a woman. She almost exhausted me. We decided to take a break. Michelle will be down soon. How is football?" 3-2 in favor of United, it seems. I don't really look at it. James shifted in his chair. "Have you ever tried another type of sex?" "A couple of times, but we both didn't like it. Not ours." "Got it. I was just thinking of asking her if you don't mind." "It's up to her to decide. I haven't seen her for a long time." "Oh, sorry, if we exclude you, we can have a threesome later." "She'll probably be in favor." That's how it is. Harry could not contain his irritation when he was informed what his wife would be ready for and when. James realized his mistake and tried to correct the situation. "She really loves you, talks a lot about you, and worries about you. She seems to be very talkative, having sex with you all this time." "What can I say? She loves sex." The bad joke sounded inappropriate. Harry gave James a hard look. "I think it's time for you to leave." James realized there was no point in arguing and quickly went upstairs. A few minutes later, Michelle came in and sat next to Harry. "Did you ask James to leave? He gets dressed and says you're upset. I don't understand. Are you aware that he wants to have another type of sex with you?" "Yes, he said something about it. And, I don't know, we didn't particularly like it before. Maybe I'll let him try if you don't mind, but only if you're not upset." "Oh, you noticed that I'm here, and my opinion means something." "I understand. Now I see. Sorry, I got carried away. Sorry for excluding you." At that moment, James looked in the door. "Okay, I'll go. Thanks for today. I hope everything is okay." They heard the door close behind him. Michelle became worried. Leaning towards Harry, she kissed him. "I'm your hot wife, right? I know you loved seeing me so." Truly satisfied, he was just a machine, and it was so exciting when you walked in. "I love that it turns you on too, and—" Harry interrupted. "You have to remember that I'm not a cuckold." His words, laced with barely restrained anger, made Michelle flinch. "I know, honey, you can take me whenever you want, but we are exploring our desires and boundaries." "Sorry if I did something wrong. Let's see. You have sex with him for 5 hours and ignore me after the first 20 minutes. What could go wrong? And then he tells me when you will be available and for what. I thought you wouldn't want me after." "Well, after he had sex with me for the first time." "Lie down on the kitchen table. Now." "What?" "You heard. Take off your robe and lie down on the table where he had sex with you." Michelle looked worried, but complied. She took off her robe and stood at the table, trying not to show her emotions. A tense silence hung in the room, which was interrupted by the sound of a light clap. What are you doing?" she exclaimed indignantly. "You have to listen to me and not argue," Harry said sternly, his voice sounding firm. He took a step forward, his gaze full of determination. Michelle tried to back away a little, but his confidence stopped her. "It was well-deserved," he added, continuing to speak in a calm but authoritative tone. Her gaze darted between surprise and offense, but she understood that it was useless to argue now. "Well, try to explain yourself," she grumbled, trying not to show that she was offended. Harry noticed the oil, took off his jeans, and, spreading it on his fingers, looked at Michelle. "Have you really decided?" "Yes, you were going to do it for your boyfriend, so everything is fine. Or have you changed your mind?" "No, everything is fine. I trust you." After several hesitant attempts, they finally approached each other. Michelle's feelings were mixed, but she felt his care and confidence. "What am I to you? You're not just someone. You're my husband, my support. That's it. And I will always be there to support and protect you. James doesn't matter anymore." "Yes, you are right. Sorry, honey, you will always come first." After these words, they hugged, sitting on the kitchen floor, surprised at how sincere and important their connection had become. Michelle's panic began to subside. She had never seen her husband so irritated. "I've never seen you so angry or so controlling. You made me angry. I'm sorry if I went too far or was too rude." "No, it was my fault, and I really liked your decision. I'd rather we didn't argue and risk losing you. I'm all yours." They needed time to sort out their feelings. It had been a few months since she and James had met, and they had decided to go on a long-desired vacation, choosing a cruise to the Far East that they had been talking about for years. Harry admired how sexy Michelle looked in the elegant evening dresses she had bought for the formal dinners on the ship. This made Harry realize how much he missed seeing this sensual side of his wife. To their surprise, on the second evening, they were invited to the captain's table. Harry noted that all the women at the table were very attractive. Michelle was seated next to the captain. He was a sophisticated and charming host and clearly enjoyed being the center of attention. All the women, including Michelle, listened to his every word with obvious admiration. The captain danced with all the ladies at the table and then asked Michelle for a second dance. Harry noticed his wife looking at the captain with an enchanted smile. The captain leaned over and whispered something in her ear. When Michelle returned to her place next to Harry, she whispered, "Do you want to discover your hot wife again?" The captain offered to go up to his cabin. "No, Mitchell, I don't think so. I don't like him. He's a smug guy who ignores all men and thinks he can get whatever he wants." Michelle looked disappointed. "If you want to have fun, pay attention to the junior officers sitting to my left. They seem like decent guys." Michelle looked at them. "Wow, they're really cute. Do you mind?" "No, to be honest, I'd like to see that side of you again." "Do you want me to just flirt or seduce? I think we'll see how good you are at it." The captain was clearly annoyed when Michelle got up to dance with one of his officers. When another officer took the initiative during the second dance, Michelle was delighted, but the captain was clearly unhappy. When the dance ended, the captain sent both officers to check the state of affairs on the bridge and support the night shift, making it clear that this was an order, not a request. After that, he turned to Michelle, inviting her to the next dance, but she replied that all of her dances were already reserved for her husband. Harry immediately took her out onto the dance floor and held her close as they danced. "Thank you for fulfilling my request. Everything is fine. It's something we do together or don't do at all. You were right about him." That night, they made love with incredible passion and tenderness. They continued to enjoy their time on the ship, refusing further invitations to the captain's table. 3 days later, Michelle sat between two junior officers on the sofa in their cabin. She kissed each one in turn, caressing both men with one hand. Two pairs of hands hungrily explored her body as the officers unclasped her bra and began kissing and fondling her breasts. She looked at Harry. "Can I sleep with both of them?" "Of course, my hot, delicious wife. Show them what an experienced woman can do. I'll be back in 2 hours. Make sure you're done by then and don't completely exhaust yourself. Leave some energy for me." "Okay, darling. See you later." When all this began, Michelle thought that she would be the main one in their marriage. After all, she could control Harry, like all men, through their desire for her. But everything turned out to be completely different. Harry became confident, strong, and she loved it. She was ready to do anything for him. She wanted to explore new dimensions, but only with his participation. The results were unexpected and exciting. She remembered their previous boring sex life, and she shuddered from these thoughts. She knew it wouldn't last forever, but for now she hoped their adventures would continue. Her thoughts were interrupted when the junior officer carefully began to have sex with her while the other stood in front of her face. Michelle and Harry decided to accept the officer's invitation and went to a private party for the crew. The spacious lounge cabin was filled with laughter, soft lighting, and soft music. The partygoers seemed relaxed, and the atmosphere seemed casual. When they entered, they were immediately noticed by a middle-aged woman with bright green eyes and short hair. She approached them with a welcoming smile. "Welcome, I'm Emma. You are newbies, right?" "Yes, this is our first party of this kind," Michelle answered, slightly nervously. "You can feel it, but don't worry." Emma gently took Michelle's hand. "There is no place for judgment, only for pleasure and openness." Harry noticed Michelle's expression relax. Emma really knew how to win over people. A few minutes later, they were sitting on comfortable sofas in the company of Emma and her husband Mark. "So what brings you here?" Mark asked, looking at them with warm interest. "We're experimenting," Harry replied, catching Michelle's gaze. "This is still new to us." "Great," Mark nodded. "The main thing is to be honest with each other and know your boundaries. Do you have rules?" "Yes," Michelle answered. "Only what suits both of us. Everything is discussed in advance." Emma smiled and nodded. "Smart approach." Mark and I also started with the rules. They became more flexible over time, but we always knew it would strengthen our marriage. After a while, Emma suggested giving a short tour of the party to introduce Michelle and Harry to the other participants. Michelle immediately attracted the attention of a group of young officers who asked her to dance. Harry, who remained on the sofa, noticed a woman who was sitting a little further away. She met his gaze and smiled. After a few seconds, she came over. "Is this your first time here?" "Yes, it's a little unusual," Harry admitted. "It's obvious, but you look calm." "My name is Isabel," she said, holding out her hand. "Harry, nice to meet you." Isabel sat down next to her and began talking about her travels, her light French accent sounding almost hypnotic. Harry found himself drawn to this woman, but he was still focused on Michelle, who was laughing with the officers near the dance floor. When Michelle returned to Harry, her face was glowing with happiness. "You won't believe it, they're so cute. And it's so funny. Jake said that I look like an actress in old movies." "He's right," Harry smiled. At that moment, Emma approached. "Sorry to intrude, but Mark and I thought you might want to stay with us in one of the cozy rooms." "No pressure, just for a chat, or more if you want." Michelle looked at Harry, and her gaze clearly said, "Your decision." "We'll try," Harry finally said. They found themselves in a small, beautifully decorated room with soft lighting. Mark and Emma were casual as they began talking about travel and life views. Gradually, the conversation became more and more intimate. Emma sat closer to Michelle, their knees lightly touching. "You're gorgeous, you know," she said, running her hand along the sleeve of her dress. Michelle smiled slightly and looked at Harry, who was watching them. Emma leaned closer and kissed Michelle softly on the lips. At that moment, Mark put his hand on Harry's shoulder. "You are an incredibly generous husband. This is rare." Harry nodded, feeling the tension in the room rise. He understood that something important was being decided now. Michelle kissed Emma back, and Harry felt his desire and curiosity begin to overcome any remaining doubt. After the evening with Emma and Mark, their relationship with Michelle took on new shades. They discussed what happened the next day over breakfast on the cabin terrace. "It was unexpected," Michelle began, sipping her coffee. "In a good way?" Harry studied her gaze. "Yes, Emma was so confident and gentle. And Mark, he was absolutely correct, but you felt like he respected your boundaries. This is something new for us, but I feel safe knowing you are there." Harry nodded. "You were incredible. I even liked watching you. You looked so free. He paused, as if contemplating his next words. "I was thinking about what happened. I think it makes us closer. But now I realize that I would like to try it myself. Perhaps with Isabel." Michelle was surprised, but quickly got over her emotions. "You are sure? She was nice, and I saw how you interacted. If that's what you want, I'm all for it." Harry felt relieved to hear her encouragement. At the next party on the ship, Harry and Isabel were close again. Michelle, seeing their conversation, sent him a slight smile and began talking with Mark. Emma was busy talking with other passengers at that moment. Isabel suggested going out on deck to enjoy the night breeze. Harry agreed. They stood under the starry sky, their conversations becoming more and more frank. "You don't seem like the kind of person who often decides to do such things," Isabel said, leaning a little closer. "It is," Harry replied, feeling both excited and a little vulnerable. "This is all new for us." Isabel smiled, her voice becoming softer. "Sometimes new facets can reveal something amazing." She touched his hand gently, their fingers intertwined. Harry felt the tension between them rise. Isabel slowly approached and kissed him tenderly. It was a completely different feeling, not comparable to what he experienced with Michelle, but no less pleasant. When Harry returned to their cabin, Michelle was waiting for him. Her face shone partly with curiosity, partly with excitement. "Well, how did it go?" she asked, pushing a glass of wine towards him. Harry smiled, feeling his nerves gradually calm down. "She was incredible. Completely different, but it made me realize how much I love you. All this makes our relationship stronger, you know?" Michelle nodded. "I'm happy for you. And it excites me knowing that you've discovered something new." They both felt that their marriage had moved to the next level. Instead of jealousy and fear, they experienced delight in honesty and openness with each other. On the third day, Emma and Mark invited them to spend the evening in their cabin. This time, the conversation began with a discussion of deeper topics: trust, boundaries, and how such relationships affect couples. "How do you feel after everything?" Emma asked, pouring the wine. "It was incredible," Michelle replied, looking at Harry. "We have become closer." Mark nodded. "This is the main thing. Many are afraid that such experiments will destroy the marriage, but for us, it has become a source of strength." Emma, smiling, walked up to Michelle and touched her arm. "We would like to offer you one more evening together. Just this time. We could make it a little more intense." Michelle and Harry looked at each other. Their eyes met, and Harry nodded slightly. "We're ready to try," Michelle said, feeling excitement and a little trepidation. The evening with Emma and Mark was a new revelation for them. Together, they explored the boundaries of their desires, but this time everything happened much deeper and more emotionally. Harry and Michelle felt incredibly close, even when surrounded by other people. When the night ended, Michelle whispered to Harry, "Thank you for this. I never thought we could come this far while remaining so close." Harry hugged her, feeling that their love had become even stronger. After an adventure-filled cruise, Harry and Michelle returned home. Although their experience on the ship had opened up new horizons for them, returning to familiar surroundings was accompanied by mixed emotions. They enjoyed the peace, but at the same time they felt that they could not simply return to their old routine. "Everything seems so quiet," Michelle said, looking around the cozy living room. "After everything that happened, this is a little strange." "Weird, but not bad," Harry hugged her. "We have time to comprehend everything that happened." Michelle nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "But you want to continue, don't you? I see it in your eyes." Harry smiled. "Don't you want to?" Michelle thought about it, remembering how much those moments when she was with other men and Harry watched turned her on. She felt herself beginning to worry again, but at the same time she understood that her husband remained the main man in her life. "Perhaps we should move on, but carefully." A couple of weeks after returning home, Michelle and Harry decided to attend a couples event organized by a local club. The evening was anonymous. Couples communicated behind masks, which added to the atmosphere of mystery and lightness. At the event, they were approached by a couple, Steve and Lily. They turned out to be quite open and friendly. Steve, a fit man of about 40, immediately found a common language with Harry, and Lily, a striking brunette with bright green eyes, caught Michelle's attention with slight coquetry. "You have amazing energy," Lily said, watching Harry touch Michelle's hand. "It's obvious that you really love each other." "It's the basis of everything we do," Harry replied, looking at his wife. Steve, in turn, turned to Michelle. I can only imagine what it must be like to see your wife being courted. It must be incredibly exciting. Harry nodded, feeling his excitement begin to build. That's true, but what I love even more is seeing her enjoying herself. Michelle felt a slight surge of warmth upon hearing these words. She turned to Steve. Are you sure Lily isn't jealous? Lily laughed, her voice melodious. Sometimes I get a little jealous, but it's a nice feeling. It reminds me that he is still mine. Later in the evening, they all found themselves in a cozy room with soft lighting. Harry and Michelle felt relaxed, knowing that they were surrounded by an atmosphere of respect. Lily started first. She walked up to Michelle and gently touched her shoulder. You're amazing. I hope you don't mind if I go first. Michelle looked at Harry, who nodded in approval. Lily kissed Michelle tenderly, her movements both firm and soft. Steve, standing next to Harry, watched this with a slight smile. Do you mind? He asked, looking at Harry. No, I trust her, and that's the most important thing. Gradually, the dynamics in the room became more relaxed, and all participants began to interact with each other. Harry felt his arousal peak as he watched his wife pleasure herself. When it was all over, they returned home. In the silence of their bedroom, Michelle lay down on the bed and looked at Harry. It was incredible, but I need to know. Were you really okay? Harry lay down next to her, running his hand through her hair. It was a new experience, but it once again confirmed how much I love you. You were happy, and that's the main thing for me. Michelle smiled, clinging to him. Thank you for existing. I know this may all seem strange, but to me it only strengthens our bond. Harry hugged her tighter, feeling that their relationship had truly moved to a new level of trust and intimacy. Since then, they began to explore the world of open relationships more intentionally. They attended parties, socialized with other couples, and explored their desires. Michelle and Harry set clear boundaries that helped them feel comfortable and safe. However, they also realized that they needed time to rest. Their evenings alone became more intense and passionate than ever before. Harry and Michelle discovered that each new experience only strengthened their love for each other. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.